next thing we're going to look at is implementing switch port security. So by default, if I put a switch in and I have jacks in the wall, somebody comes in from the outside world and plugs into a port, they're going to get access to my network. This may not be the best bet. I may want to limit who has access to the network. So this is what we're going to do here in this next section. Looking at layer 2 security, including port security, which is 802.1x, DHCP snooping, and dynamic ARP inspection. So this is going to try to protect our system from a couple of different things. One is somebody coming in and taking over DHCP to reroute traffic, for example, to become a man in the middle. The second one is ARP inspection, basically stopping somebody from ARP flooding our network with invalid ARP entries that would point people to, again, to the wrong spot, trying to become a man in the middle or trying to steal traffic. And then finally, port security, stopping someone from plugging into a port that they're not authorized for. So remember how ARP works in a switch. When a packet is seen by the switch will take that information about the source MAC address and put it in the MAC address table for that particular port, right? So in this case, F01 will get associated with the source MAC address of PC1. Switch 2, F02, gets associated with the source MAC address of that frame coming in. So that's how it's learning about some devices. Now, it can also learn about devices because this guy is going to be asking and flooding the network with ARP requests for other devices, which the switch will then learn about when it receives a response back. So somebody could, in theory, generate ARP packets claiming to be PC1 from anywhere on the network, and then they would get the traffic that was destined for PC1. Now, we also have the ability to limit the number of devices in a port, and we have the ability to secure a port to certain MAC addresses. So here's how we would set that up. We use the switch port mode access or switch port mode trunk interface commands, so both of those can be set up with port security. We then use the switch port security to enable port security. Optionally, we can set the maximum number of devices, MAC addresses we're going to allow on the port. We can also set up what happens if there's a violation. Do we protect, restrict, or shut down? We can also set MAC addresses, so port security define the MAC address that we want to allow on that port. We also have the ability to make the MAC address sticky, so once it learns it, it will only allow that MAC address back on that port. So we have some options here that we can use to help. So here's an example. So in this case, we have a statically assigned address. So we're going to use the port security MAC address command on port FA01 because it's server 1. It's going to always be server 1. We want that statically assigned. Server 2 comes on the network. We want that one to be sticky, so we want that to maintain here in the database and not allow other devices once the server comes online. The company controller is dynamic. That's going to dynamically learn. And we may have additional ports, additional MAC addresses allowed, depending. But we've dynamically learned that it stays in the switch, and only that device will then be able to connect to that port until it times out or is removed. And then we have another switch connected into the switch So we need to have a maximum of more than one. Say there's 4 devices over here. We put a maximum of 8. That gives us the ability to have 8 MAC addresses associated with this one port. Once 8 MAC addresses are learned or we've statically assigned them, no more devices will be able to connect. So here's what that looks like in the configuration. So in the case of our FA01, we've statically assigned using the switch port security MAC address command, and we put the MAC address. For switch port 2, port security MAC address sticky, so when it learns an address, it will hold on to it forever. On port 3, mode access, switch port security, it's going to learn the address and allow only that client then to connect. So somebody would be able to unplug that and plug in another device. And there's a timer that gets set for that port security. And I think it's, can't remember, I have to look it up. I think it's 8 days by default, or 7 days. The device would have to disappear from the system for 7 days before it cleared. You can't adjust that timer. And then the final one, we turn on port security and we set a maximum of 8 MAC addresses that it can learn. Note, when we do sticky, it will learn, once the server is plugged in, it will show in the config. So it puts port security MAC address sticky and the MAC address. So you can actually see what MAC address is associated and remove it if necessary. We have the show port security interface command, which shows us if it's enabled, what mode it's in. In this case, it's in a secure shutdown state. The violation mode is shut down. Maximum MAC addresses is 1. Total MAC address is 1. Total configured is 1. The last source was this MAC address. Looking at port 2, now remember port 2, we had the MAC address sticky command on. This one is enabled, the port status is secure up, the violation is shut down, maximum MAC address is 1, and we see the last source of this one. So the difference between this one here, this one is secure shutdown, this is not the MAC address that's supposed to be there. If we go back here, it's supposed to be this MAC address, but it wasn't, therefore the port is now shut down because of the violation. So in order to see the MAC address, we do a show MAC address table secure interface FA02, and it will show me the MAC address associated with that interface. If I just do a show MAC address table dynamic interface FA02, I will not see the MAC address because it is not dynamically learned, it is statically set. Even though I use the sticky command, that basically sets it statically. Remember, it puts it into the config. So what are the 3 modes for protection? The first of all is protect. It discards the offending traffic, doesn't send logs, doesn't disable the interface, doesn't put it in error disabled. It just will not allow that traffic to pass. So if that person unplugs and plugs back in the original correct machine, the port will go back to functioning normal. When we have restrict set, it discards the offending traffic and sends logs and SNMP messages. Still doesn't go into an error disabled, still doesn't stop all traffic, it just stops the offending traffic. And then finally shutdown goes into an error disabled state, sends the logs and discards any offending traffic as well as all other traffic. So shutdown is the most secure. Restrict is going to log it, but not stop the correct traffic. And protect is going to just stop it and not even log it. So confirming your security port violation mode, we do show port security, and it will tell you the port and its action. And if there was more ports, they would appear in here as well. Now, if I have a large enterprise network, do you think I want to manage MAC addresses on individual ports most of the time? Chris doesn't want to. I mean, you don't want to know what MAC address has to be associated with every port in your entire network and manage it at the switch port level. I don't see why not. So there is ways to integrate this into Radius so that it's not looking at the local MAC database, but it will actually go out to the Radius server, and if the machine is in Radius in the right groups with the right attributes, it will be allowed on the network. If it's not, it will not be allowed on the network. But from a summary here of that, if a port goes into error disabled, it goes to a down state, and it is sending a syslog message, and it shows the last MAC address that was connected. So we can then see what device put it into the error disabled state. In order to get a switch port out of error disabled state, you actually, one of two things, you either have to reboot the switch, or you have to go in and clear the config, shut the port, and reactivate the port. So this one is in protect mode. So our violation mode is protect. See that up here under the config, shows us that. And you see we also have zero security violations at this point. And this one's in restrict mode. Note we have a MAC address, security violation count 97. Because remember, in restrict mode, it's not actually disabling other valid traffic, it's only disabling, not allowing the invalid traffic. We do get a log that says security violation caused by this MAC address on this port. So here it is in restrict mode. It's secure up. Note the count is every time that there's a violation. It's syslog messages, 97 of those would have been sent, and we will see the last MAC address that was violating. Any questions on port security? And this is without a Radius server. We're going to talk about the Radius server coming up next. Had this up.